Hello, my name is Cassandra Fiddler, and this is my presentation. So, should prohibition be reinstated? I believe that it should. So, during the 1920s to 1930s, in 1920 of January, people started to empty out a beer because the 18th Amendment had came into effect. And over here you see protesters and one of the most notorious mobsters of the time, Al Capone. A British Prime Minister at the time of the Great War had said, "We are fighting Germany, Austria, and drink, and as far as I can see, the greatest enemy of the three deadly foes is drink." Now, it wasn't just the U.S. that had decided to go with prohibition. It was actually several countries around the world. Countries were blaming like Russia was blaming their losses at the Great War because of alcohol consumption. And some people went as far to say that it was grain, that it took up they took up too many grains. And even King George V had pledged to not drink alcohol until the war was over. So, of course, the 18th Amendment was born in January of 1920, and this was the beginning of Prohibition. And it was led by the world's women's Christian temperance movement. Women were dying for the ability to be able to vote because their husbands were always drunk or abusive, or there was just so many things that they found that was not morally right also about drinking. So they wanted the right to vote. And then finally in 1920, Prohibition went into effect. As other countries around the world had decided that they would rather not continue with the Prohibition when the war had ended. The United States was actually the only country that kept Prohibition around. Now, this introduced more crime rates and mobsters. However, the crimes, they did involve homicides and such, but most of the crime was centered around bootlegging alcohol. There was so much crime around, and the most notorious of all was Al Capone, and he made about $100 million a year back then in his crime business. Did Prohibition work? Even though a lot of people would say it didn't because it was overturned in 1933. Prohibition did work to a certain extent. There was about 30 to 40% of the amount of people that used alcohols that actually dropped, along with the illnesses that came with it. Unfortunately, nowadays the numbers of people that are using are growing, and it just keeps going on. There's underage drinkers, and then you get other drinkers, and it's actually proven in statistics that on 21st birthdays, 80 to 90% of people will celebrate their 21st birthdays with drinking. And there's a lot of illnesses that are contracted by the use of alcohol, and a lot of these are cirrhosis of the liver, and it's proven to at least be involved with 7 different types of cancers. And it also allows your heart muscles to become weak or even droop, and your heart can be affected in as many as one use, and of course that one use would have to be of heavy drinking, but your body does suffer a lot from it, and especially in adolescents because their brains aren't fully developed. So they will drink, and unfortunately it can cause brain damage because of this, because their brains aren't even done growing. So some other illnesses are, of course, there's cancer and then cirrhosis of the liver. But another illness that, well, kind of labeled under illness is there is a lot of sexual assaults, date rapes, and homicides that happen because of alcohol, and it's been proven that all of these things have alcohol have been involved with these crimes. And when it comes to children, it's kind of sad because children who grow up with using parents, which about 70% of using parents are addicted to alcohol, and it's odd, but kids do develop learning disabilities and are more likely to develop learning disabilities with parents that use alcohol. And then the death rate is just amazing. 3.3 million people around the planet die each year because of alcohol consumption. And about 97,000 of those people, they die just in America alone yearly. Females are more likely to seek help than males are, and it's just a sad thing, especially for the children because they're innocent. In fact, about like 1 to 5% of 6,000 first graders that they had done tests on have fetal alcohol syndrome because pregnant women don't seem to quit even though they're pregnant. This is an interview that I did with my cousin. He has a severe drinking issue. When I went to his bedroom last, because he lives with his grandparents, and I walked into his bedroom, and the amount of beer cans piled higher than his bed, just completely covering his floor to the point where you couldn't see it, and I'm not over exaggerating. He had he was drunk, and he told me himself that he needs to drink at least 14 to 21 beers a night before he will go to bed. The oddest quote that my cousin Nick said to one of the questions that I had asked him when he interviewed was, "I woke up on the side of the road and got woken up by cops miles from where I was drinking. Someone called in a dead body, and I had bruises all over. It was the most I've ever drank, and I do not remember how I got there." And there's a lot of things that influence, that people are influenced by when it comes to alcohol. Alcohol will make you make choices that you would never make before, and unfortunately some of those choices are parents that will put their addictions before their own children. People who get kicked out of their homes or are threatened to kicked out unless they could quit their drinking. And some people unfortunately never reach rock bottom. So we can do things to prevent the number of addicts. The World Health Organization had mentioned that the best way to do this is to increase prices, especially on taxes. However, they haven't raised taxes on alcohol since 1991. They want to restrict advertisement, and they also want to constrict the availability, narrowing it down to basically distributors that can be the only people to sell alcohol to places that sell it, and for the place to go out and buy their own alcohol otherwise is illegal. So my credits and sources are listed here. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Alright, you guys all have a good day, and remember, stay sober.